all right. Good morning, everybody. Yes. Stretch and yawn. It's one of those mornings. You got to stretch a little bit. Let's do. You remember that when they used to do the TV aerobics in the morning? They'd make everybody.
Yes.
And remember. And right. All I want you to do this morning is stretch.
And really, all it was a legal way to get leotards onto apartheid TV.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Because the apartheid government was so stupid that if you sold them a bill of goods, they'd usually just, yeah, that sounds all right. Yeah, it's just to keep people fit and healthy. Yeah, we'll put that on. And then,
nothing to do with my love of leotards at all.
No, and then there'd be a whole lot of men in South Africa who'd go, there's all these hot people and these girls in these leotards. And leotards are not sexy by any estimation. But, in those days, it was
like shrink wrap for a human.
But they were slim pickings because, you couldn't even get there were magazines with like semi-naked girls in them, but they always had stars on all the important parts. So you never really got to see. It was called Scope magazine.
They didn't have stars on their brains, Gareth, so it wasn't all the important parts.
Yeah, okay, so most parts. Right, correct. All right, good point, well put. I'm not going to argue with you.
Did we ever have a South African version of like Playboy? Was Scope that? Was it like a local?
No, we had those things
content
as well. That shit was banned outright, right? There was no Playboy. Were never going to be allowed to launch in South Africa, so Scope was like a local alternative. It was later that like Playboy and Penthouse launched here, and then all of the others that followed. I know like Hustler had a very big South African edition.
Yes,
but is
it died out years ago, but I know it was a big thing.
No,
would there be South African people in there?
No,
very few.
Hang on. Before 1994, Gord, there were none of those magazines. There was only Scope, and Scope was on the top shelf.
Was the OG.
It was on the top shelf of certain shops that sold magazines, and it was in plastic. And if you managed to buy one, you had to be over, I think, 18 or 21 to get one.
Yeah.
And then
the
inside they had these girls from overseas. There might have sometimes been, because I know there was a local guy who was trying to publish it. Might have sometimes been local girls in it, but they would always have, like, there would be big black stars, 5-pointed stars over the nipples and over the lower genital area.
Yeah.
So you'd get like a hint. You wouldn't get the whole picture, right?
They also, like, as I recall, and I mean, these were like out when, by the time I was old enough to read these things, they'd gone global mainstream smut. But like, what I do remember from Scope is that it was always like oddly themed, like a lot of cowboy themed shoots. Like,
yes,
it was very weird that in every magazine there was at least one lady dressed up like a cowboy or cowgirl, and then like stars over the nipples. I was always like, what is the fascination with Western culture?
Yes.
That was kind of a thing then.
Listen, people were so desperate for anything that was vaguely sexy. I mean, we were. You've got to remember that government, and there's a lot that's become almost apocryphal. People look back and they've got very few good things to say about them because they really were awful, awful people. They were like fascists, really, and they didn't like you to have fun. Almost puritanical as well.
They're also one of the worst fascists in terms of fashion. Like, other fascists have often had a keen eye for fashion. I'm serious. You got to get people on board.
Right.
You want to brainwash the masses. You want to look cool, even if you're very evil, so that people can be like, yeah, shit, I want that like badass Lagerfeld uniform. They just made everything brown and khaki. Like, of all evil regimes, they're up there with the evilest, but I think that they clearly take the cake on the ugliest evil regime in history. And I don't mean like ethnically what people look like. I mean the way that they build gray buildings and khaki everything and face brick and brown wood everywhere. Everything looks like a school hall from 1960.
And the school hall is exactly the kind of room that they loved. They loved a room that was like, really authoritarian. And I remember the best example of that brutalist architecture. And remember, this is the same kind of architecture that appealed to the communists in Eastern Europe. It's this very hard, concrete. They liked undecorated, and if it was decorated, it had to be decorated in an extremely modern and ugly and unattractive way. It was really hideous. And these guys thought this was so great. Most of the buildings built during apartheid, those apartment blocks and things, were so ugly. They were just revolting. And really, I mean, fashion was bad. That was bad. Television, the shows on TV were terrible because you couldn't, God forbid they should put on a show that was actually entertaining. And especially if you were unfortunate enough, because on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they'd do shows in English on TV. And on Tuesday and Thursday, they'd do shows in Afrikaans. So even if you didn't like the English shows, you had to watch them. And if you were Afrikaans, that was too bad for you. If you were English, you didn't want to watch TV on a Tuesday and Thursday because it was all in Afrikaans. It was dubbed
but
really
you could
bad.
simulcast some shit. Like I used to watch Beverly Hills 90210. And like I remember it was one of the first, not strategic consciously, but it was one of the first things I started doing because like of girls, like all the girls at school. I was in standard 4, so class 6, and standard 5, class 7, and so all that was like, now you're making friends with the girls and you're getting crushes on them, and your friends everyone's got boyfriends and girlfriends, and the girls in the school all loved Beverly Hills 90210. So the dudes started watching it, and then we loved it too, and then you were watching it for your own reasons. But you had to tune into Radio 2000 and Radio 2000, and you have to tune into that shit. So you're watching TV that is an English speaking program. Afrikaans is coming out of the TV. You've turned the TV right down and you're listening to the radio. And it's not a problem that it's out of sync, but it's always just a little bit out of sync.
A little bit, yeah. Well, I mean, listen, that Beverly Hills 90210 was kind of the only show that mildly appealed to anyone under the age of 25 in South Africa at that stage. The rest were like much older. There was like, Agter
Elke Man was a vibe. Network was the like the post news analysis network.
I don't remember that.
You guys lived in a completely different world.
Yes. This is the point. That it was really horrible in many ways, even for people who weren't into politics and didn't know what was going on in the bigger picture. I'm talking about just for kids.
You know what has been lost out there? And it's not in any way attached to the politics. This is just an innocent bystander that died with that era that should have lived, and that's the advertising jingle. Like, I love advertising jingles. And if I'd have been working in advertising in the day of the jingle, I would have been like a world champion, because it's so much fun to write little crap like in between class and in between play, Nestle cheese spread makes my day. Like, they don't have that anymore, and it's sad. So you used to sing a song for every product. Like, think of some of the jingles that you will never forget, no matter how hard you try.
You got that earworm.
Forever, for the rest of your life.
You've just reminded me of that one, but I'm trying to think of some others.
Oh boy, Mum remembered Melrose.
Yes.
I wonder, because there's so many that you'll kick yourself as soon as you think of any, because now you try to think of them, you're like, oh shit, I can't think of any. But let's ask the listeners in the comments, jingles from your childhood or early adulthood that you cannot forget no matter how hard you try. Also, Tracy Bart points out that there was an Afrikaans version of Scope in the early 2000s. Can't remember the name. I think the editor was a woman. And Orksy Head has replied, that was Losleif. So yeah. And I always wondered, like, what does Losleif mean? Because I'm second language, like loose body, or leave like los as in leave.
Los as in she's a Losleif. She's loose.
She's easy. Loose. Yeah, I couldn't. I was like Losleif, like leave body. I don't understand.
You remember this? It's good and clean and fresh. Tra-la-la. You remember that one?
So many great ones.
Laurel. The City Golf ad. There was a City Golf ad. They had red, yellow, blue.
Red, yellow, blue, not green. Red, yellow, blue. Doobie, doobie, doo. This one's for you. Red, yellow, blue. Red, yellow. Oh, Jay and Seymour, set 2 is something new. Spray it on wet air, and your style will stay there. Jay and Seymour, set 2 is something new. That was all you had to do all you had to do to make an ad was just come up with an annoyingly catchy song.
Here's a good one.
Oh yes, I want to be a Simba chippie.
Camphor cream, hands, heels, knees, and elbows.
And they had like
I know the remake as of a few years ago, which was Ingram's protects heels and elbows. That's the one I know.
Ingram's they protect everybody, and they've got all kinds of tunes.
There's one that
I want to be a Simba chippie. I want to be a Simba chippie.
There's one that Jane reminded me of 7 years ago, which was the sugar one. How did it go?
I love sugar.
Yes.
Nature gives us energy.
Yes.
I love. Yeah, there was a drum and bass. There was a young drum and bass act that I was friends with that used to play at a lot of gigs that we would play at. And they had like a little song that was like energy, energy, energy. They made like a drum and bass tune out of I Love Sugar. And it was cheesy, but the crowd loved it and it was fun.
Isn't this what we were made to believe? What's his character's name? I think his character name was Charlie. Charlie Sheen's character in 2.5 Men. Isn't this what he did? And somehow he made oodles of money and just sat at home.
You could. Yeah. Listen, if you wrote one of those jingles that we just mentioned now, and it was really catchy and it worked beautifully, what would happen is they'd use it for a local product and then they'd even use it internationally. And you'd get every time it played, because this is the old days of royalties, every time it played, you would get paid. So you could earn, even if it was, in the old days, like 20 cents a play, you could.
That would be a lot now.
Huge amount of money. So over the course of like a year or two, that you could live on that.
You mean as the voice artist?
No, as the writer, because the composer's always got the most money. Even in music, composers always get the most money.
Nowadays, the industry is structured so that the writer gets not necessarily the least, but like you just get your crap salary, and you write world-beating jingles that no one ever forgets. Your boss goes, well done, now you have to do 2 more. Like the idea of having an ongoing investment in a piece of creative work you made is something that the creative industries in the world are horribly lacking. There's no incentive. You make the best and most beautiful thing you've ever made. They say, well done, give you your salary. Maybe a year later, if in your spare time you spend ages making an entry video, you might get an award, which the company will keep and put on their mantelpiece. Now, I get it. We're all part of a company. It's a team effort, whatever. But that idea of like, if you make something brilliant, you keep getting just a tiny bit of something for as long as it's used is like, oh, that's a novel idea. I'm not saying give the artist 100%, but maybe 1%.
You're right, though, that kind of creative process isn't rewarded the way that it used to be. But then that's true for the music business as well today. I mean, if you buy someone's song on Spotify or Apple Music, they get like a cent. It's ridiculous. They can never live on that. The only artists who've made money on that, even the ones who sell millions and millions of those, they'll never make enough to live. You have to do the performances and merchandising. But here's another good one. You have an uncle in the furniture business?
Oh, yeah. Joshua Everybody's Dore. Got that's always that's like Joshua Dore is my like, the character, the mascot is like my go-to archetype for a middle-aged white guy. When I'm like describing a boardroom full of Joshua Dore-ics, like, okay, guys, we gotta go present work to a room full of Joshua Dore-ics. Prepare to spend 70% of this using marketing buzzwords that mean nothing to lube them up into listening to us. Okay, we know and understand the following words from 1996. ROI, synergy, leverage the golden thread. And I'm going to say all of those. I got a checklist, right, guys? We're just going to say the following 100 words so that you guys can take us seriously. And here's the artwork by.
The Joshua Doors.
Do you remember VW and me? We all believe in
equality. Yeah, I remember I didn't remember the words to that. And I got like embroiled in a racial scandal because I just didn't know what it meant. And no, seriously, I was like 6. I didn't know what it meant. And I thought the words were VW and me, we all believe in quality. So like make stuff well. So I was like changing the words to songs like I always do. And I went around the school singing, we don't believe in quality. And then it got back to the teachers that I was teaching the kids to sing, we don't believe in equality. And I then got explained what equality was. And I was like, the song is about quality. And I'm just making a joke. And then I was like, oh shit, that's a political ad.
There was one for Pick and Pay, which my friend Nicholas and I perverted. We changed it from Pick and Pay hypermarket, blow your nose on the carpet. It's a great place to keep your snot.
Yeah, everybody. That one was nationwide. Kids of our age or thereabouts. That was the Cremora ad. It's not inside. It's on top. Not really a jingle, but a classic line.
How about zap it in the ZB bin to prevent us from
zap it in the ZB can? That's and there was never a ZB. There was never a ZB anywhere. Like there were like 4 in Joburg and 2 in Cape Town, and you're supposed to hold your garbage until you saw the cool bin. Do you remember those garages with a giant zebra outside? I used to drive past them as a kid and I'd be like, why don't we go to the zebra place? Like it made no sense. We just drove straight past it. Like we get petrol sometimes. Why do we get it from anywhere other than the zebra place? They've got a zebra.
I remember those zebra. Why is it that things like that fascinate you as a child? As a kid, you're just so you're amazed. You're enraptured by something like a zebra in a garage.
It's like a life-size toy, and it's the size of a zebra, and it's like totally novel. You want to touch it.
Was it the Total garages that had the zebra? I can't remember which ones.
I really don't know. I want to say Caltex or Total because they've got a similar color scheme. But I really don't know. I don't even know if it's a garage that's still around.
No, it was Trek, according to Zunaid. Zunaid says it was Trek.
What is that?
I'll take Zunaid's word for it because I remember it was something that might not be around still.
Sia's listening to all of this, looking at us, and he doesn't even know. He has no reference point at all.
Somebody posted a meme that I saw on social media in the last few days that said, like, it was worded a bit more succinctly, but it basically said, when people talk about the 90s now, it's as long ago as the 60s was when people talked about them in the 90s. So that just blew my mind. I'm like, when I was a kid in the 90s, I was born in the early 80s, but I was like a teenager in the 90s, and people spoke about the 60s. I thought it was like 500 years ago. Like, just it was barely archived in terms of video footage. It might as well have been the 1800s. And now I can just imagine, like, Sia's listening to us talk about the 90s and 80s, and it's like listening to parents talk about 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's like 20 plus net or completely 30 years ago.
These are 80s and 90s.
In all that you guys are mentioning, I'm trying to even see if anything has been referenced at home. Have they said anything here? Have my parents mentioned these things? No, Trek does not sound familiar to me.
Do you have any ads? Sia, do you have any ads that are like classics from your childhood that you either can't forget or wish you could forget? Like, what are some classic old school ads and brands to you? You're gonna say Chapa Suckers.
I'm thinking about Scott's Emulsion. I don't even know what
Scott's Emulsion. I like you.
You help me to grow.
I never knew what it was, but
I don't remember that. That's great.
I remember that.
I like you help me to grow.
It's a full-on song. Closer to tight, not too tight, and now they don't fit me at all. Why? Tables and chairs seem so small. Can't play with them anymore.
That's the one. And you remember that?
Growing up.
This is definitely before Sia's time, but I used to get so freaked out by this. There was a dude who, like, his body sort of disappeared in parts. At first he was just hands, and it was like, you want nails that ain't too thin, you want something in your face and a healthy glowing skin. And it was about some like multivitamin, and the dude would like go invisible. It freaked me right out.
Oh,
Unbelievable.
That shit can haunt you.
But you know what's so weird, Gord and Sia, is that this stuff, like sometimes you remember it like yesterday and you can remember the words to some stupid jingle. And then other stuff, like the important stuff that you should be remembering, you don't recall the damn thing. It's so weird how memory works. And you know that they've done innumerable research surveys into how memory actually works. And there's a very interesting one that I read about tangentially years ago, where they said that people can be in a situation, even a really traumatic one, where your senses are heightened. You know, you can hear everything, see everything, smell everything, taste everything in that moment. But over time, your memory starts to become more of a narrative than an actual recollection.
100%.
So you have a story in your head, and you actually can't remember the details of it. I mean, they've tested this on people in court, for example. You know, if an accident happened a year ago, there's a certain set of facts, which is why they make you write an affidavit and get the police to stamp it, because that's your most recent memory of it. A year later, they'll test it again, and you've left out or changed completely the details of that story.
Or they'll ask you, like, did it come from the right or the left? And you'll be like, I'm not sure. Or you'll just say right, but you wrote left a year ago.
Correct. And then
you interpolate the details you don't remember each time. So you've got basic plot points, and those basic plot points become fewer and more important. So it stops being a story of 15 steps.
Up to 5 years ago, it starts to bear very, very little resemblance to the truth. And it's just so odd how our minds can keep certain memories in perfect order. And you can remember exactly how to sing the lyrics to a certain song that you might not have heard in 20 years. But you cannot remember whether your gate opened to the left or right at home. You can't remember, whether your mom used to wear mostly blue or mostly orange or mostly pink or whatever it might have been. You can't remember any of those things. If you were asked on pain of death to recall your home phone number when you were at primary school,
803-8174.
See, you could probably do it.
Or you're in the minority.
It's just a geographical thing, I think. But the thing with the jingles is that you can't forget them. So as a form of advertising, they're so effective. But I remember there was a transitional phase where they sort of died out, like they weren't hip anymore. And those people who were doing them were trying to do them as like popular music. They were trying to make it sound like what the kids are into. You got to just make it a nursery rhyme. Don't try and sound like, WAP. Don't do a WAP song for Simba chippies. Make it like a nursery rhyme. Chippies are fun. Chippies are nice. Don't worry if you get fat and die. Just have another pack of delicious chippies. But they'll be like, yo, chippies, man. And you just like, okay, shoot yourself. There was a peanut butter ad with a little kid that did this rap, and I hated it so much. Like in my mind, this poor kid probably just got paid a bunch of money and he could rap a little bit, and it was like fun to do an advert for a day. But he was my enemy through childhood. Like I wanted to destroy him. But you were talking about things becoming a story as opposed to a list of facts. Like being right is what's most important to most people. So you've got a story, and in it you're right, and you'll fight to the death about the story because in the story you're right. It's not the details that matter. It's your position in the outcome.
I mean, Lenice is saying pretty much what you've said now. When she had to teach her kids phone numbers when they were very small, that she would sing it to them, and that's how they remembered the phone numbers. And I
still remember numbers like that.
I remember studying for exams in matric, because before matric I didn't even put in any effort to study. I'd go in with whatever was in my head, and
exactly the same as me.
Fortunately, in most cases I would have passed. But in matric, in order to learn, I used to make these notes, and there were these people who were convinced that if you just drew like a, what did they call it? A brain map or something. Mind map. That's it. And then
a spider diagram.
Right. And I hated those things. I'd prefer to just write it out in actual handwritten notes that would just be points, and I still do that.
If you rewrote it from the notes, it somehow stuck in your brain, the process of writing it again.
Well, I mean, it did. For me, it made it made it stick a little bit more. But if you ask me about anything that we learned in matric, I doubt very much I'd be able to give you any content. Even though I studied that, I spent a quite important part of my life memorizing stuff for matric. I think we discussed this the other day, those equations that you had to know for science. I don't remember them easily. And in fact, when I recited one the other day, I got it wrong. So it just shows.
I still think, though, that if you could dedicate a year with no income worries or minimal income worries, I know a lot of kids have all kinds of income worries, but if you could replicate your own privileged situation and have a year to learn those 6 or 7 subjects and write a test at the end, I don't believe, with a possible exception of advanced maths, because that's either in you or it's not, and for other people also art, because it's in you or not, but with the exception of those two, I don't believe there's anything I couldn't get 97 or higher for if I had the whole year to learn for 6 tests. I think you could read a matric textbook and read it. I think you could read a matric textbook 2 or 3 times and then kind of know it off by heart.
Well,
not off by heart, like you can completely recite it, but enough to write a test on it. Like if you read matric history 3 times from beginning to end, you don't think you could pass a test on it?
No, I could.
Read it 5 times, you could get an A.
But it's just, as you say, maths, different story. Particularly
art's a different story. Music.
I mean, do you remember anything about trigonometry or calculus or do you remember doing those algebraic equations? I mean, if I gave
tan your hide cause X-rays, shade your rear cause X-rays will tan your hide. That was the combination of tan, sec, cosec. That was how you remembered all the different sec, tan, and cosec, and sine and cosine.
If I asked you to solve an equation now in algebra, do you think you could do it?
Yeah, if it was like a x plus y equals 2 minus 1 equals -7. Like if it's a swapping things from each side of the equal sign, up to a certain point, I could do it because I understand the rules and the steps. But don't ask me if I have to remember a formula or remember the tan and the cot and the cosec and that shit. I don't remember any of that shit. So if you're still in the land of x, y's, squared, square roots, pluses and minuses, like I can bodmass the shit out of things if you give me enough time to think and do it. Okay. Algebra is beautiful. Algebra works.
Sia just shakes his head. You couldn't remember to do that stuff anymore, Sia.
No, and here's something I picked up over the past couple of days, what I think a lot of us have tended to overlook, except maybe parents or people with young people in their lives. I was looking over what my nephew was doing at school and trying to explain to him, things about sums, for example. But there are things that we now have so embedded in us naturally that it's so difficult to break down as simplistic for them at that level, because now we just know it's like, oh yeah, anything, you take any figure away from 100, you get this. But for them, you have to further break it down, and you have to explain how many 10s there are in 100. Oh no, it's just too much.
That's 10 though. That's an easy one.
No,
but kids do learn a lot of different stuff.
Process. It's too long.
School basically needs to leave you with general knowledge. Sorry, could you go ahead?
He says, "Can you still do long division?" I can't do that, eh?
Basic long division, but as soon as it gets more than 2 digits into 3, no. I remember the principle of it. I can still draw the thing and carry the 2.
Oh, let's hand out a fine. Sharon is late this morning. She overslept, so Sharon, this is unacceptable.
Oh God, Sharon.
Sharon, this is so embarrassing. We
don't ask you for much, and we depend on you.
Well, the funny thing is, Sharon, if you haven't discovered it yet, there's this great thing called podcasts, and you can listen whenever you like. You could wake up at 9:30 if you like, and we'll be there.
We don't even need to do the show at this time. You could listen to us anytime, unlike us who have to start at 6. I'm just kidding. Sharon, I don't blame you. I hope you slept well.
Captain Barrett is breaking a cardinal rule this morning, and therefore we're going to ban Captain Barrett from the show forever. Asking me to give his partner and soon-to-be wife, Hein Bwimpies, if that's really your wife's name, I'm very, very concerned about who you're marrying. Happy birthday. No, we don't do happy birthdays, and we don't do shout-outs, and we don't do these.
But Captain Barrett didn't know, and it's Hein's birthday, so let's just make an exception.
Captain Barrett's never allowed to listen to the show again. I'm so sorry. Not allowed.
I'm defiantly wishing you, Captain Barrett and Hein, a happy time.
What a name for a girlfriend. Hein.
Hey, what's wrong with that?
She's probably lovely. She might not even be a girlfriend, and he's probably lovely. Who cares? It's Hein's birthday. We love you and your name, Hein. It's just Gareth that's a dick. The rest of us are nice.
It's headline time. So let's look at what's going on. This is a big story. The South African Health Products Regulatory Authority and various parties fighting for the use of ivermectin have reached a settlement agreement for the compounding of and access to the drug. This has been a very controversial thing. Apparently, government decided at some point, no, we don't want people to have ivermectin, even though ivermectin has been shown to have some very positive effects for people who are fighting COVID. Ivermectin. Gord?
So there's a thing that's good for helping people suffering with COVID, and the government do or don't want it to be allowed in South Africa.
They tried to ban it. Registered medical practitioners who are entitled to prescribe medicines in Schedule 3 of the Act may, by their personal and professional discretion, prescribe ivermectin. They were not allowed to do this until now. If they were doing so, they were doing so illegally up to now. And many people were being supplied ivermectin by doctors that they knew, but it actually wasn't allowed because the government decided no. So luckily, they decided.
Government says no.
Yeah, so they took him to court, and now ivermectin can be prescribed, and it's up to your health practitioner to decide whether or not they.
Was there like an ostensible reason why the government didn't want it? I mean, are they unable to get a middleman into the import, or is it supposed to have a risk? I mean, what was the theoretical problem?
So the SAHPRA, SAHPRA, which is the South African Health Practitioners, whatever it is, register. Hang on a second. Health Products Regulatory Authority. That's what it is. SAHPRA. They decided no, and they've actually been ordered to pay R1 million to contribute to the costs of the 4 applicant groups who took them to court. And those 4 applicant groups are the kind of people who really do care about your rights, not the government. And I think that it's worth giving them some credit too. AfriForum among them, and other parties who are lobbying for the use of ivermectin. So now you can use this stuff and your doctor can prescribe it to you. And it's about time. The fact that this even had to go to court, every time you want government to do the right thing in this country, you have to take them to court to do it. They just cannot do the right thing on their own. Dummies. There are other stories that we need to pay attention to this morning. Among them, a double murder-accused businessman is back in court. Reminisce is his name. He's in the Polokwane High Court for allegedly killing his wife. He was cross-examined about the clothes he was wearing on the day his wife was murdered. He's out on 250,000 rand in bail. And if you want to see what he looks like, he's the kind of guy who grimaces at the camera, so he's not helping himself here. If you see a picture of him, you'll see what I mean. He looks like the kind of dude who is not keen to give the best impression. I'll show you what I mean. Let me find you this picture of him quickly, and then you can get an idea.
Sometimes when I do voiceovers, I'm not keen to give the best impression either, but I just soldier through it. It's my job.
That's mightily brave of you. Here's the guy, Ramiz Patel. That's him.
I refuse to engage in calling and saying that someone looks murdery. He just looks like he's pissed off and having a really crap day, and that he might have gone to Opikopi this weekend.
No, he looks murdery. I'm going to say straight up.
He looks hungover and pissed offy.
No, murdery. See,
give him a face mask. Give him a face mask and a haircut. Maybe we might talk.
He just looks pissed off, and he's maybe on trial for murder. I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. This doesn't reflect either opinion or whatever. You just can't say an oak that's clearly going through murder court and looks like it's a bright sunny day and he doesn't have sunglasses. Looks murdery because he's not enjoying murder process.
I see this guy see murdery. Sorry.
What if someone didn't know about this and then they just saw their cousin pop up in that photo? It's like, what? My cousin did what?
Dodgy. That's all I'm going to say. Then in other news, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, this is quite a big story, has backed a tax rise on companies. Well, it's easy when you have many hundreds of billions of dollars to say, let's put up the taxes. But you know that the taxes, they hit people very, very hard, especially in the middle. If you're super rich like him, what do you care if they tax you at even 70%? Because you've earned so much and you've got a company that's so valuable that you really, it doesn't matter to you. He says that the corporate tax rate should go up from 21% in America to 28%. Now, I mean, we have taxes in this country that make that look favorable. I mean, the personal income tax in South Africa is north of 45%. So I'm never in favor of tax. People who like taxes tend to forget that governments don't make that money. They don't create the value. They just glom on like a tick, and then they suck that value out of whoever is creating it. And it is theft. It is theft by government sanction. That's all it is. If anyone walked into your business and said you have to give me half your money, you'd shoot them.
Or you'd say, what do I get in return for that? Like some electricity, correct. Maybe the odd road. But I watched
government do that, and people go, "Oh no, it's very important that people pay their taxes." No, it isn't.
It's a big sort of political fulcrum in America. And I watched that. Now, look, firstly, I know that things like John Oliver and Stephen Colbert are as left biased as a lot of your Fox News and stuff is right biased. It's not a balanced opinion. They're very pro-Democrat. But they were explaining national debt and national deficit, which the Republicans who've always famously driven sky high during their administrations are now using the national debt as a way to try and make the Democrats look shit. But like how national debt can be good and how America owe more money to Japan. And there's this narrative that they owe China a lot of money, and they do owe China a lot of money, but it's not a significant portion compared to the rest. Just fascinating how like the argument is whether without debt, you can't build future infrastructure, or whether having debt means the economy is in bad health. It's like even the idea of debt is in debate as to whether it's good or bad for a country to have.
Yeah, I don't even want to go down that road. All I'm saying is if you've earned money, I don't think it's right that a bandit comes in and takes half your money at gunpoint.
Yeah, it's like you have to pay rent to live in the country you're from, and then they don't deliver any of the things they're supposed to deliver. Not like few of the things, virtually none.
Morally, it's just wrong. And, the people always talk about that companies or that individuals who've made lots of money must pay their fair share, including Elizabeth Warren. She talks about your fair share. She's a senator in America who's been complaining. Listen to her.
So we've got a lot of work to do to fix the international tax system, and I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues here to do that. A good place to start is to be clear about the extent to which giant corporations are already manipulating the tax code.
Now, she talks about giant corporations manipulating the tax code, and she worries that these giant corporations aren't paying their fair share. Just bear in mind that those big companies and the people who run them are paying more than their fair share. In fact, those people are probably bankrolling 70 to 80% of federal expenses that they pay for through their taxes. So what is a fair share? Because if it's fair, if we're all equal, then everybody should be taxed at the same rate. But that's not how it works. People who make more money get taxed more. That's just how it is. And not just pro rata. They actually get taxed more. There are special categories of tax that start to kick in the more money you earn. So when is it going to be fair?
I mean, I've had the one, though, where sorry, Jesse, but I've had the one where you get an increase and you get incremental increases, and then you get excited, and then you realize you're earning less the next month as a result because you've just crept into another tax bracket, and the increase doesn't cover the increased percentage in tax. I have literally had to decline an increase before, and in order to just remain earning the same amount of money and not get less.
Absolutely. Now, don't tell me that that's a good thing. Let's not pretend, everybody, please, that.
Also, I freelance and I contract, so there's.
But once you're paying someone more because they're doing more work and they've got more value to your company, that now suddenly that means government can nail them harder. I think that's horrific. I think that's absolutely criminal. But you know what?
Yeah,
because it's the law, they can get away with it. Government have enough violence. That's what it is.
A lot of people sort of live more or less in one. When I say live in, I don't mean they're stuck there forever, but they spend long periods being used to one tax bracket, and then if it changes, it's like a milestone in life. But mine changes because I contract and freelance, and some years are a lot better than others. 2018 was a lot better than 2020 financially, and when you see yourself actually go into a higher bracket that you weren't in 2 months ago, it's you feel it. It's painful.
This is interesting. Environmental Affairs MEC in the Western Cape said some of the main problems that came with the winter season include flooding and fires in informal settlements, and they're gearing up for that in the Western Cape. They are worried about a very cold and wet winter season. Disaster Management Center is putting contingency measures in place to ensure public safety. It includes an agreement with the South African Defence Force to use its helicopters for rescue operations. So they are putting all the plans into action to make sure that the Western Cape is safe this winter, because it's not a great time there in terms of disasters that occur because of fires and flooding. So look out if you're in the Western Cape. The government there are trying to think ahead instead of just react to what goes on.
But now, like, you've got COVID, people have lost jobs, things were dire to begin with, and now they're expecting not just floods and fires, but worse ones than usual. And Cape Town, they have both of those regularly, and they're very serious.
Yeah, these are
it's just going to be more suffering for people.
A key witness in the trial of George Floyd's murderer, Derek Chauvin, or killer, sought Tuesday to avoid giving evidence as his lawyers said he could incriminate himself on separate charges. Maurice Hall, that's a hell of a name, who was with Floyd in his car shortly before his death, is in custody, appeared by video camera at the hearing after he was subpoenaed to testify. There's a very small, narrow topic that might be permissible, the judge said, as Hall's lawyers argued that it was impossible for him to be cross-examined without incriminating himself. So
can't you get some sort of immunity in exchange for your trial, your testimony, excuse me?
Well, I don't know that that's valuable at this point. Listen, they're going to have a very tough time convicting this guy of murder, because murder, the standard is reasonable doubt. And if you have any reasonable doubt at all, remember this guy, George Floyd, had like enough fentanyl in him that could kill a horse. And they're saying that whether or not Derek Chauvin had put his knee on the neck of George Floyd, it wouldn't have made any difference. George Floyd was going to die anyway. And there's video of him in a shop before that where he's looking really, really high and jittery and jumpy. Now this friend of his, who might have been a useful witness, can't testify because he'll incriminate himself. So it's looking increasingly like this is not going to go the way that so many people in America want it to go. But here's what will happen. If George Floyd, his killer, Derek Chauvin, if Derek Chauvin is found guilty of murder, then people will say, you see, there is this is racism in America. If he's found not guilty of murder, people will go, you see, this is evidence of racism in America. So again, if you want your narrative to triumph, you'll find a way of making it happen. People like to be right, as Gord always says.
Yeah, I don't know enough to have any real input on that, except to say it is always at its heart going to be, to an extent, not to an extent, it's a murder issue. It's about humans, but it's a race thing. So whatever outcome, race angle is going to benefit and another race angle is going to suffer. So it's a racially sensitive thing. It's going raceward, whatever happens.
No, absolutely. And then this seems to be
where?
Raceward.
Raceward. It's headed towards race vibes, regardless of the outcome.
That's Gord's new word for the day. All right, I want to turn our attention quickly to Sean. Sean Sanders.
So do I. Hi, Sean.
Morning, guys. How are you all doing? I just feel like that was like a scary intro there. Like, hi, Sean. How are you doing?
Yeah. No, that's Gord. It's about as scary as it gets.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so guys, how are you all doing? I think I actually don't ever ask you how you're doing. I mean, you're always asking me how we're doing at RevX and how the crypto market's doing and all the rest. How are you doing?
No, we're fine. Don't worry. If we're here every morning, things are fine. The day that we're not,
the crypto you know the crypto guys are having a good time of things at the moment, where they're like, "How are you dudes doing? Morning, guys." Like, never mind the crypto report. Give us your report.
Yeah. So, Sean. Let's do what we do at the beginning of all of these. Just give people a price on Bitcoin: $57,584, and nice Ethereum is up at $2,093 according to my ticker. So that looks pretty damn good. So what is happening in the world of crypto? Well, to fill us in is none other than Sean Sanders, co-founder of Revix, and we're going to talk about the cryptocurrency market. Apparently, it broke above $2 trillion, making it more valuable than Apple, the company. So all those people who've always said, I'm not going to invest my money in crypto because companies are where the value is made. Yeah, sure. Show me a company that's gone up by the percentage points that Bitcoin and Ethereum and Cardano and all the rest of them have done in the last while. That's a hell of a thing to break through the 2 trillion mark, right?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I think it's a difficult sort of concept for people to understand, crypto, right? Blockchain, it's like a load of jargon. And it's kind of like when we entered the internet period. I mean, I was super young. Most of us are actually pretty young. But when you enter the really early days of the internet, I mean, 70s, 80s, even like, late 90s, it was weird. I mean, you didn't have actual user interfaces until the 80s. I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? Like everything was done through some sort of code. And I think the crypto market and the blockchain market, when I say blockchain market, I'm really referring to sort of the decentralized finance space, everything that's going on in the background. I mean, it is like weird. It's wonderful. It's like crazy. People don't quite understand it. And I think what people need to look at when they're looking at the crypto market, I mean, sure, it's gone up a lot, right? But if you look at any successful investment that's ever occurred, whether that be the likes of Amazon, Naspers, Apple, that go through the list, at some point in time, it's gone through a significant growth. It's increased a lot in value, and people are going, well, is this in a bubble? And then you look out 2 years from now, and then you're still going, well, is this in a bubble? And it just continues, increasing over time. Personally, and again, there's so many opinions in the world of crypto, and I guess some are right, some are wrong at different times. But I do think that you will see Bitcoin, just looking at Bitcoin alone, increase in value and become more than gold. And if you then fast forward in 5 or 10 years' time, the tables are going to be flipped, and you're going to essentially be looking at Bitcoin making up 10% of gold's market value. Gold making up 10% of Bitcoin's market value, and that's currently the other way around today. I think that's really the big opportunity, is looking forward and saying, well, is the future going to be more digital? Yes. Do you think that we are going to have the currencies that we have today? I don't think so. I think it's a little weird, right? I mean, I always have to look at these sort of weird things we have in society where you sign a document, you squiggle on a piece of paper, and now you've authorized the document. You used to put a stamp on a letter. I suppose you still put stamps on a letter.
We were talking this morning about if you were in a car accident, you'd have to fill in an affidavit and go to the police station and have them stamp it and all that stuff. I mean, there's going to be a way in the future that the blockchain can hold all of that stuff, and that will be irrefutable. It'll make it, on the ledger, there'll be this entry, and everyone can check it, and it'll be unfalsifiable effectively. That's one of the applications that I think people are probably underestimating, because there's so much that we can do in terms of the applications of blockchain technology, and particularly because Ethereum will be the backbone for so much of that will improve our lives, and we won't even realize until we're there, except the people who started early, which is where you come in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's really the big opportunity here, right? I mean, when you saw the internet coming about, not everyone wanted to run out there and go, well, let's start an internet business, or let's do something in the internet space. And now the internet's part of everything that we do. We can't imagine a society without it. And I think in the not too distant future, you're going to be looking wistfully off into the distance and thinking back to the days when it was normal to hand out paper money with kings and presidents and all these weird animals that we have printed on them. I think that's kind of crazy. I mean, I even think the idea and this won't even be that far in the future, maybe 10 or 15 years, the idea of actually driving, having a human behind a wheel, will seem completely obscene and crazy. And I think that's the future we're heading into, right? So
it'll be even
I think we need to get ready for that.
Even weirder if people still have to go to ATMs in even 5 years from now, which we know are not just a locus for crime, but it's an unnecessary thing to do. You can now send people money.
And unhygienic as hell under the present conditions. I mean, you got to go and it's like a device. It's out in the open, facing the road, like anyone can use it. And it's like you have to touch it all over the place in the same exact place that other people just had to touch it. And there's no obviously they can't put a dispenser of sanitizer on it because it's facing the road. It would disappear in 10 minutes. It's like you have to go lick a window to get cash now.
Let's just talk about this bubble, because people are saying, the negative people, and we'll get to the positive ones in a second, but there are a lot of people who are nervous, and they're saying, this Bitcoin bubble has to burst at some point because it's up over 700% since last year. But, what do you make of people who have that claim and say that you should be very careful? This thing's going to blow up, and then you've put a huge amount of your money into it. Be very nervous about this. Bitcoin is just a fad. What do you say to those people? Because you must meet them occasionally.
Occasionally. Oh, yeah, no, often, right? I mean, everyone was a skeptic until they became a convert, right? And I think if you're looking at, again, any asset, right, it doesn't just increase in a straight line. It's kind of, if you look at actually Bitcoin's price chart, there's a really interesting chart out there that sort of shows the 2017 bubble, and then goes to the 2015 bubble, goes to the 2012 bubble. And there's all these sort of periods in Bitcoin's history. I mean, every asset's very similar. I mean, it's certainly every crypto asset. You've got periods, and there's sort of like the 80-20 principle that comes into this as well. You've got very short periods of time where you get a lot of the return, and then the rest of the time it's sort of just jumping up and down and not really making the big gains. And I think it's really a case of stop looking back. I think that's the most important bit of information or education that I can provide anyone. If you're looking at a stock's performance, you'll never look at its last 12 months performance. That doesn't matter, right? I think a lot of people, certainly retail investors or rookie investors, look back at the last 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, and they go, oh, this is up 3,000%. It surely can't go up more. I mean, if you applied that logic to any really successful investment, you're going to be kicking yourself when it goes up another 1,000%. I had, I've said this on the show before, in 2017, I was like, I missed the boat. I was like, oh my word, can't believe I missed out on this crypto thing. In 2015, late 2015, I was saying exactly the same thing. And I feel that way now. I don't think you should feel that way now, personally. I think like, you really
got into it, and now the chance is gone.
I think the easy money is gone.
Sell me on not believing that anymore, Sean.
So if you're looking at, let's just look at Bitcoin alone. I mean, Ethereum's up, I think, got a far bigger upside. And I mean, the rest of the crypto market has a far bigger upside. But if you're looking at Bitcoin currently being about 10% of gold's total value, if that changes, right? And remember, there's currently a big rotation happening where money's moving out of gold and moving into Bitcoin. And a lot of new institutional investors are entering the crypto space, and their sort of gateway drug is Bitcoin. Later on, that may then filter down to the likes of Ethereum, Ripple, and all the rest. But I think if you're looking at that opportunity and saying, well, Bitcoin's going to act as a store of value. It's going to act as a sort of store of account, very similar to the way gold is acting at this point in time. And those tables switch. And it's not to say that gold's value just declines, but it's to say that Bitcoin actually becomes a better store of value. And in many ways, I think it is better. And if that happens, you're looking at, from where we are today, a good 20 to 30x return. And I think that's really the big opportunity here. Again, you're not looking, when you enter the crypto space, because it is such a volatile and risky asset, you're not looking at making a 10 or 20% return. If you're trading it, sure, like go to the casino sort of thing. But with Revix, what we're really saying is look out 5 or 10 years time. You've got an entire generation choosing to buy digital currencies, and Bitcoin in particular, over gold. I mean, gold, it's interesting, but in many respects, it is a fairly boring asset. It's not really that useful. And now you've got this new digital payment system. Potentially a central bank could adopt this. You could have a Bitcoin ETF, which provides so much upside opportunity, right? You've got this entire market of individuals that are having to buy cryptocurrency through platforms like Revix and through other cryptocurrency exchanges and all the rest. And in the future, there's going to be financial products that make access to Bitcoin really easy for the big players. Currently, that's still a difficult market. I mean, there's ways that you can get exposure, but that's a difficult market. And I think when that happens, as I mentioned, I mean, central banks can enter the space, and that really changes sort of the investment opportunity.
All right. I had an email from Chris, but we're not going to have time for this now. We'll have to talk about it when we see you next time. Chris says, please ask Sean a question regarding Revix. When will they bring in a method to make withdrawal from abroad easier? The only current option is via a Bitcoin withdrawal, and the gas fees are high. So he wants to know about how that works. So we'll let you think about that for a few days, and we could talk about it when we next, when we next see you. But for now, I'm afraid we're out of time. All right, Sean, thanks so much.
Perfect.
As always, interesting stuff. What do you want to say, Gordo?
Just that Jerry Good has said that he's got 50K laying in his account. He wants Sean to sort him out with a solid Bitcoin plan for guidance. I don't have 50K lying around, but I also want that plan. So where can we continue to follow up with Sean once he buggers off now and leaves us all unattractive on our own?
You can go to revix.com, sign up for free. You can verify your ID. You can add funds and select the bundle of your choice. And there are people there who will help answer all of your questions. Just go to revix.com for further information. That's the best way to do it. Thank you, Sean. Cheers, man. Awesome. All righty.
I have to say I'm very proud of you,
Just as soon as
Gord.
he came into our lives, he's gone again. Sean, he's always, it's just, you need 5 more minutes of Sean.
I'm very proud of you, Gord. There was a sitting duck of a joke that was right in front of you and you didn't go towards it. With that ATM reference, ATM, something facing the street, waiting to be touched, but you didn't go there.
I didn't, because I don't want to embarrass myself in front of Sean. I get nervous, and also because we're talking business and stuff, and I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of the business, but he might have just paid to do that. I don't know how it all works with sponsorships and stuff. So whenever there's an external person, I just hold my tongue.
Good for you. Well done. That's cool. That's cool. Good judgment. All right. It is a Wednesday morning. It is the 7th of April. CliffCentral.com. Stick around. We got lots more for you in the next hour.
Finding quick solutions is key to a great economic quarter. Use the Nando's app to order a quarter chicken with any single side for only 49 Rand in just 20 seconds. Nando's. Fire it up. T's and C's apply.
Do you grunt when getting out of the car? Creak when getting out of bed? Do you walk into a room and forget why? Are you having trouble in the sack? Is the hump in a slump? Join me, Chris Haven-Smith, and Dr. Mark on the T-Health Show every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. where we talk to medical and allied professionals about those serious and not so serious medical lifestyle issues. The T-Health Show, sponsored by the T-Clinic. The T-Health Show is available on podcasts. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
The world's apex predators have fearsome reputations, so it's hard to believe that some of them are facing a fight for survival.
In Nqobile and False Bay, white sharks are almost completely disappeared.
Blind Conservation is the story of these endangered predators. In our first episodes, we speak to global experts about the alarming plight of the great white shark.
Each shark that lives out there, one day out of 4 days, it can be killed.
And what you can do to help one of nature's most magnificent creatures survive for future generations. Join me, Spike Ballantyne, and my co-host, Anthony Medera, for Blind Conservation, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
cliffcentral.com on a Wednesday morning. CS Angweni's here. I'm here with Gord Laws and with you. You can get hold of us on 079-748-2090. Let us know what you are up to. And if you have any questions on anything that you've heard on the show, anything you've seen on the show, you can let us know too. Gareth at cliffcentral.com. We're going to speak to Nqobile, who's a regular listener of ours, and find out he's got like some issues with The Bachelorette and Love Island and all of that stuff. And he's also been outspoken about how difficult it is to date in 2021. How difficult things have become for people who are actually looking for a partner because these apps are no good. And while, you know, everybody has their own stories and some people's stories end happily and some people's stories end with misery, It is more difficult than ever to meet someone and actually have something happen. I mean, I certainly think that's true across the board. So we're going to speak to Nqobile about his ideas there. And so we've got also a bunch of other stuff that we've got to get to this morning. Can I just show you a quick video? I think you might appreciate this. There's this guy who I think he's a reporter for this TV show. But what makes this funny, and if you're not watching the YouTube channel, you do need to get on here and like and subscribe and all of that stuff, because then you can see what we're talking about as well. But I'll describe it afterwards. So it's a news anchor, and she goes to the reporter, but the reporter is no, it's hilarious. So watch this quickly. This is from some or other British news channel. I think it's BBC. Watch this.
Now to our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue, who's in Minneapolis. And Gary, all eyes on this case.
Yeah, I mean, Rita, one of the biggest.
So basically, she goes, and we're going to cross to Minneapolis in Minnesota now, and we'll go to Gary, who is all eyes on this case. And then Gary has one eye that looks up, and the other eye
Gary's
that looks
got
down.
eyes like Carl.
Gary looks like a chameleon. You know how chameleons can focus on two different things and either eye. Yeah, it's bad. So all eyes was not necessarily the best opening line for Gary.
Cross as well is not the one. Cross an eye and then that Gary reference. Oh,
So
Gary.
good. I love stuff like that. It's always, and you know, the anchor can't help themselves. Like, even if they've written down some of the intro, and oh shit, we're going to cross to cross-eyed Gary. So let me just not use the eye reference. And then what happens? She uses the eye reference. You almost can't help yourself.
Give me that murdery man in the first hour before Gary. Oh, Gord, I'm losing you.
Gord, you're delayed horribly. We can't hear you. No, what's that, Gordo? Try again. No.
At least his picture's frozen on something that looks good.
Yeah, let's wait for him to. Gord, re-add yourself to the stream. We can't even understand you. It's like, at one point he was talking like this. Then suddenly, it's very annoying. I got to ask some advice on something, and this is a touchy issue, but I wonder if it's not just an issue I'm dealing with. A lot of people are. Everybody has these WhatsApp groups, right? And I'll wait for Gordo to get on here, because this is something he might have some advice on too. Gord, you're back. All right. I need your advice on something. So we've all got these WhatsApp groups. Some of them are with friends, some of them are with family, some of them are with people you've known for a very long time. And occasionally what happens on a WhatsApp group is that one of the people tends to go astray. They become a bit of a problem. So I'm on a number of WhatsApp groups, but on this one group in particular, there is a person who will remain nameless. I don't want to out them. This is why it's sensitive. But they're really not paying attention to anything that's being discussed on the group. It's only about them adding.
Are they making it a way to force people to read their Facebook statuses?
They're making it a way to incorporate their completely mindless stream of consciousness nonsense and to inflict that upon the rest of us.
Yeah, make people listen and make people care.
They basically are. They see this group, which is, I mean, I've been on this group. I checked the other day. It's been going for 10 years almost. It'll be 10 years next year that this group has been going. And
has this person been annoying you for 10 years? Or has the group been fun for 10 years and now a person's ruining it?
Yeah. It's been fun for at least the last 9 years, and there's some really funny stuff on there, and it's kind of everybody just updates everyone else on what's going on in their life. But it's also conversational. So if, for example, I'm talking about, let's say how your week has been, Gord, what you got up to over the long weekend. And Sia's also listening in, but then suddenly Sia decides, while we're having a conversation about your long weekend, he's going to foist into the conversation some bizarre story he has about an interaction he had with a wild animal on the road on the way down to Durban. but we're actually in a conversation, and everybody else except Sia is in that conversation. And then he jumps in and starts his own story, and everybody's like, "Hey, dude, what the fuck? I mean, we were having a conversation here."
But if everybody is going, if everybody's saying something and complaining as well, and it's not just you watching, getting irritated and saying, "Why isn't someone saying something?" Then kick the person out the group. Whoever, so then just be like, whoever's like, I don't know, either the most comfortable with non-dickish confrontation, or whoever's kind of air quotes in charge should message the person and say, "Listen, this is bothering everyone in the group. We all love you, but we may have to kick you out if you don't stop doing it. Nothing personal. Just you're not." So
we've tried that.
Lovely friend, good at bad at group.
Okay, we've tried that. The problem is the person in question, I think, is very lonely, and they are feeling very isolated. And I'm
if that
concerned.
person is everybody's friend, then chat with them privately and let them know you care. And if that person is just driving everyone nuts, then kick them out. Just exit them from the group.
Here's the problem. I really do think that this person might need this group more than the rest of us, because they might not have anyone else to talk to at the moment. They might be very, very... No, this is a problem.
So also not your burden to bear.
Well, this is it. Like, everybody on the group is saying, well, why don't we start a separate group and let this person just carry on talking, babbling incoherently to themselves.
How many people, give or take, are we dealing with? 5, 15, 100?
I'll tell you now, it's probably about 8 or 9.
Okay, so then it's like, then you should do exactly that. Make the group for everyone except Pete, and then let Pete occasionally respond to Pete's crap in the old group. But my thing with people,
do you understand the sense of betrayal when and if Pete were to find out there's a second group? Oh, if I was Pete, that would crush me.
Look, my theory with people like this.
Hold on, I'm even more worried that it becomes much worse for that person. You know, if we cut them loose, or if they feel like they've been abandoned, that really they don't have a lot of other stuff going on in their life. I mean, you could tell because they're disconnected from reality already, and that's why they can't.
Well, if they're watching this episode, then they sure as shit know it's about them.
I don't think so. This is the funny thing, is like, you know, comments are occasionally made, and this person doesn't even have the presence of mind to know that we're all saying, "Hey, stop being a douche." In other words, they're almost ignorant of how disconnected they are from the rest of the world and reality. It's very complicated, and I think almost this is something that we need, like Dr. Hanan, who we had on a while ago, Sia, on the TV show and on here, to just help us figure out what you do, because these WhatsApp groups have become like, you know, virtual friendship circles, and it's very, very difficult to eject someone from those painlessly. It's very difficult to diplomatically maneuver someone in or out of a group. And there was another situation that happened on a different group a little while ago that I also want you to help me out with. And if you've got advice for us, then please let us know. I'd love to hear if you've dealt with this before, or if it sounds like something familiar to you. Where someone thought that they had been thrown out of a group, but actually they had left voluntarily. And then they were bitter and twisted about that. And I found out much later that they thought that everyone was against them. You know, this is the kind of shit that happens. No, I know, but this is what happens here.
But I hate this shit. Why do you want to be in these groups? Like, I understand the purpose. Like, I don't want to be a giant hypocrite. I've created groups before. I've got a few groups and I add people, and I'm like, hey, this is for the 3 of us that game together sometimes, purely to organize games. Like, let's not make it a chatty group. I say that when I first add people. It's like, this is for the purpose of organizing the Guns N' Roses concert that's going to suck, and we're going to go to it. But like a group for the sake of a group, like a memes group, I get sent far more memes than I want, and most are shit. But I sort of curate them by forwarding them on to people who I specifically think will like them. So like, there's a moment of thought, like, this is going to appeal to my friend Janine or Gum's sense of humor. Send it to them and not to those people. But always just very politely apologize. Like, I get added to a group, I read what it's about. Okay, the 40th is on this date at this location. Everyone starts making crap jokes and revealing how unfunny they are. I say whether I'm in or out, and I message the person who started the group to say, hey, nothing personal. I don't do groups. I'll be just, message me directly if anything changes. I'm in. I can't bear it.
Yeah. Okay. These are not, I'm obviously not talking about just bullshit random people that have been added to an invite list. This is a group that's been going virtually from the inception of WhatsApp, and it's a close group of friends. And
you're all real friends in real life.
Yeah. For a long time. So it otherwise I would, believe me, I'm not an emotional guy. I don't get caught up in this admin. I really don't. But in this case, I do feel like we have to tread carefully because people are going through a very tough time. And I think lots of people have been dealing with complicated domestic issues or with being isolated or being lonely. And you can't just, essentially, if you kick someone off a WhatsApp group now in this particular present moment, it is like kicking them in the head publicly.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that sensitivity and that you being so sensitive to it. But at the same time, if he's an ongoing problem for everyone and it's been politely, ultimately it needs to be that if he or she does get kicked off the group, then they have to have understood it's not because we don't love you in real life. It's because we've politely asked you many times. But I have a theory with this sort of thing I want to quickly just mention with friends in general. And this is also a one where it's easier to preach than practice, but I genuinely try. And I've got several friend groups that go back literally 20, 30 years. And we've all kind of got this, everyone's got something that can be annoying about them. Guy will get grumpy, I talk too much, etc. But it's like you either have to accept people that you care about, even though something about them is irritating, and just not let it bother you as best you can, or actually change that relationship. Because to slowly suffer someone who you love just more than they drive you insane, it's actually not worth it for your life. Sometimes you feel bad because like this person's going to lose a friend. And I've had to do it in the last year with a very close friend of like 20 years. But you actually eventually have to go, look, you are not a positive sum in my life. You add 45 positive, but you add 55 negative. And it's like, it's such a close call, but I just can't anymore. It's the same with, I hate the word, but toxic relationships. There's a lot keeping you in. But ultimately, you have to look at it and go, the good is not worth the bad, and bail. So you've either got to accept Pete because you love him and care about him, or get rid of him. But to constantly have him there, but you hate it, is not a sustainable solution.
So he or she is driving everyone crazy, and they're just completely oblivious to this. Yes, sir?
Let's flip it over. What would you want someone, or rather, how would you want someone to deal with you? If you were the Pete in the situation?
That's a lot of Oprah coming out right there.
I always would err on the side of like honesty, and if that hurts my feelings, tough titties. Rather know what's
I prefer a constructive, honest criticism.
I hate being patronized. So let's not, if you think that I'm unstable, boring, unintelligent, uninteresting, self-absorbed, any of those things, just say it to me, and then I can start to improve, or I can get angry.
Well, you are good at constructive feedback, though, GC. Like honestly, when I started the show, I've been doing it now for more than 3 years, which is nuts to me because it still feels like about 6 months, and I'm trying to get used to it. But always when we would do it in the studio, especially early on, the first sort of 6 months, a year. After the show, we'd chat and you'd give me like constructive criticism, good and bad. Like, this was great. And a lot of what you liked was the stuff I thought I was doing wrong. I was like, I'm sorry I interrupt so much. You're like, that's not such a problem. Just don't keep it going for so long. And I would never feel like I was being cucked on for things I was doing wrong. I'd feel like, oh shit, I'm learning more about radio. And some of the things that I'm being told to keep up with are not instinctively what I think I do well. And like, some people are good at that, and if you can I'm always welcome constructive criticism. It's just who it comes from and the place it comes from. If they're sort of shitting on you and saying, be more like me because I'm better, then it's not cool. But if someone's imparting knowledge to help you, I don't mind if they say, hey, dude, when you do X and Y, it's a bit annoying. I'm like, oh shit.
So how about this? I mean, here's a good suggestion from Gavin, and I'll tell you why I think it's a good suggestion in a second. But he says we have a 3-strike rule in one of our writing groups. If you miss a ride without cancelling, or you're out of turn or offside, you get booted for a set period. No one feels cucked because we all know the rules. Maybe what we need to do on these groups is we all need to, and this might be, something that you start from today, just put down the ground rules. Hey, everybody, this group's been going for a long time. I want us to make like a constitution, because, like with mask wearing or with sharing public spaces or with having an opinion, there are certain places where we're all in the same shared sphere, and we have to be willing to not bump into each other, figuratively. So this is the reason humans develop law, is because if you just want to do whatever you want to do all the time, and Gord wants to do whatever he wants to do all the time, that's fine until you actually bump into each other. Then suddenly you have to accommodate each other in a shared space. And this is what people develop, countries and constitutions and all the rest of it for. So maybe on each of these groups, what we need to do, based on Gavin's excellent suggestion for his group, is almost have like very simple, straightforward rules for these WhatsApp groups. Like, if you, if what you're about to add to the group is offensive, in the extreme, be careful about what you post. If what you're about to share is only about you, and you're just sharing because you have nothing else to say, don't, because we will hold you to account for it.
Or unless you've got amazing news that everyone will be stoked about. Like, hey, guys, can't believe that this happened. Yeah, I know what you mean, though, GC. Don't just randomly inform people about crap in your life that's not relevant to the theme of the group.
I mean, listen, I've just been added to a group this morning because a friend of mine is having a baby today. And that's exciting. That's cool. And that group won't be around probably for very long after the baby's born, but it's there so that we can all be informed on what's going on. That's great. And there's one place. And by the way, only admins can send messages on that group, which is always a win. If you ever start this,
then it's like a bulletin. Hey, I'm adding you all for the following information. It will come in like a news feed. Like, what do you call it? The little ticker tape at the bottom of a news thing.
Well, this is my point, is that if you do start a group for an event or something, it's got a short, window period of existence, then rather just only allow admins to post, because you don't need everybody. I don't need to see everyone going, congratulations. It's really just so that this couple can let us know what's going on with the birth of their kid, which is
but
exciting.
Then you get Pete, who just wants to be involved somehow and wants to put a congratulation, and then wants to make a mini speech, and then will want to put a meme and a gif, and we're dealing with a lot of different people with,
I think,
some
you need to
issues as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
You need to introduce the rules without implying that the rules are there as a discipline for Pete. Like, okay, these are rules to curtail Pete's ongoing shitty behavior. You got to frame it like, guys, been in a group for a long time. We get a lot of this, and this. These are the rules. Yeah. But Facebook, one of the last things that was keeping me suffering Facebook until toward the end of last year, was that there's a few groups on there that I got value out of, or felt sort of obligated to, like a football supporters group I started. And so now, like, they put it in so that you can make group rules, and when people join, they have to like acknowledge that they've read it, like terms and conditions. But then you end up with a group of a couple hundred people arguing over whether someone has broken a rule or not. And then it's like everyone's polarized because you've decided to kick someone out and half of everyone thinks you shouldn't, and you end up with a political issue. It's just a nightmare. Groups are a pain in the ass wherever they are.
Well, I mean, here's something interesting. This is on the WhatsApp line, and you can always message us there like Candace did. She says, maybe Pete's having a fucking breakdown and needs help. Yes, but again, is it really my responsibility or anyone else in the group's responsibility? Pete has family. Pete, in inverted commas. Pete has a family.
Yeah, I like the name. It's stuck now.
Yeah, it's good. Pete works.
They should have realized that this person is bored. They're bored. That's the biggest problem, is that they're bored. They have nothing. They have no one else to talk to, and they're inflicting themselves upon the rest of us. Anyway, I mean, I think we've come up with some good suggestions here. But
last point: how is Pete in real life?
Oh, well, that's also. No, that's also part of the problem. It's like,
well, GC,
I hope that this existential crisis around the WhatsApp group, do I have compassion? Should I stand up? When is tough love good? When is non-tough love good? don't know, man. We need to keep updated on this. I want weekly updates on how it's going with Pete. WhatsApp Pete.
So your WhatsApp is just the tip of the iceberg.
It's lit in GC's WhatsApps.
Pete must just watch where he steps.
I would
that's
check
like
in.
letting social media in. When you've got WhatsApp groups and like memes and this political stuff, like on Facebook, you're like a moth flying toward that satanic flame. But when it's in your WhatsApp, it's like in you now. It's in your system. It's like the virus is on your computer, not that computer.
Eleutheria says, I check in
Facebook
and find out what's going on. There's been a lot of addict behavior going unnoticed over the last year. I think that's also a good point.
I've thought about that. Hey, people who either are alone with their fix, like me when I gained weight and went to rock bottom weight-wise the first 4 or 5 months of lockdown, there was just no net. All you were doing was at home with your problem. But then there's those people who are trapped with their family, either unable to get their fix or having their fix and being stuck in a small confined space. It's a huge problem for the family. I mean, substance abuse and family violence is a major issue when the addicted person can leave the house. So those people who are suffering terribly for lack of their fix, and those people who are suffering terribly for being stuck alone with their fix and no other distractions, really, really worries me. Because I would have died of overeating if I didn't do something. Like when life was normal, you don't have time.
I want to just quickly move on to something else because Carl's just alerted me to something we discussed quite a long time ago. And it seems that this is very good news. Carl says, the Windhoek ad with Gerard Butler has been unbanned or cleared. Remember, there was a complainant, some miserable person from somewhere who said that ad was misogynistic or it was, gender. I don't know what it was, but it was like Gerard Butler saying, real men drink real beer, basically. And
actually,
this was...
Gareth, I have the complaint in front of me here. It was submitted by a Pete.
No.
So anyway, he's been waiting with that. He's been waiting. I know that feeling's here when you've been waiting with it, and it's just good when you get it out.
Well, according to Carl, they've cleared that ad. They're allowed to use it. It's a small victory, but that's important. I don't think that just because someone complains about something, we should take them seriously. I really do think that there are a lot of people who get off on complaining. And they feel.
Well, I heard that there was that complaint about me, and I was like eager to see it, and then come up with my rebuttal and have back at this person. And then I realized, like, I really don't care as long as the majority of listeners that give feedback's positive. And Gareth, who knows a thing or two about broadcasting, prefers having me on to not. I'll stay on. I don't want to necessarily. I know there's people who don't dig it, and I don't necessarily want to hear why. If somebody emails Gareth with a real problem, he'll tell me.
At this stage, you're 55-45, but let's keep tabs on that.
I'm more than happy to go. Have a referendum.
I thought it was
with 40,
45. 40-45.
Have a referendum with the listeners. If they vote me out, I'll DM them all and thank them.
No, dude, I'm kidding. All right, so while we're doing some feedback, here's something from Amy. She says, I listened with interest to South Africa's list of most dangerous cities of the world, which Sia read to us the other day, or Leanne did. One absolute load of garbage. Amy says, I've been meaning to write to you, given your wide expat listenership. Please could someone explain why expatriate South Africans are so negative? Well, I think that's fairly obvious, Amy. It's because...
Yeah, they left because of how much they don't like it.
Or
maybe just because of how beautiful some other part of the world is.
No, I think it's confirmation bias. I mean, what happens when someone's made a decision? It's like people love to hear, most people, not all. Some people like to hear stories about how their ex has become very ugly or their ex is dating someone much uglier than them. Yes. Some people like that. It justifies their decision. It makes them feel like, oh, right, I was correct to have moved to New Zealand or whatever it is. So when they hear horrible stories about South Africa, and I remember talking to Leanne about this because she had an uncle who lived in Australia, still does, and he would send all these articles from South African news outlets about crime and violence and political...
I get that from my one homie who lives in Portugal, and he's a beautiful man and I love him to pieces. And I don't even get bothered by this, but he's almost always updating and informing me about how bad South Africa is. And it's not like terrible sensationalist, the South African total bullshit. It's news, but it's like lots of bad news.
Yeah, listen, I mean, there's some places that, I suppose that there are better and worse places on any number of indices in the world. But to answer in the shortest possible way your question about why so many expat South Africans are negative about it, it's because it confirms their decision. It's a confirmation bias. It makes them feel like they made a very good move and they were prescient and they were ahead of their time and they got out of South Africa just in time and the rest of us are fucked. That makes them feel better. So that's why they do it. One would imagine that once you leave, you should focus on the future and move forward, she continues. And I think that's what smart, positive people do. But you've also got to understand that there are lots of people who have moved anywhere in the world, from good places to bad places to good, in their mind, good and bad. But they've done it for positive reasons. Like, let's say you've decided to go to, the Outer Hebrides because there's a beautiful old farmhouse there that you've always dreamt about raising your kids in, and you've got fields for sheep or whatever it is that you want to do. And you've moved there for positive reasons. A lot of people do that, but there are a lot of people who move for negative reasons. Are
you moving towards something or are you moving away from something? That's correct. The point.
Yeah, and they might have moved because their neighbor got murdered or because, they've lost all their money on the stock markets or whatever it might be. And those people tend to be motivated, even once they've moved, by other negative things. So in other words, they gravitate towards that stuff. So not everybody's positive and not everybody's focused on the future. Some people are very, very much attached to the past.
But you're also asking team leave whether it's time to leave. You know what I mean? It's like I say, those echo chamber things with political stuff where 100% of us agree this is wrong. How can and you're asking the Metallica fans at the Metallica concert if Metallica's good. These are people who've either had enough reason to be attracted to another player, enough problem with South Africa that they've already decided it's bad enough to leave. That's why the people who've left tend to speak as if maybe they should leave. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. They've left for a reason. Obviously, that reason is why they don't like the place or prefer the next. I for one, want to travel and work and live in Europe and do that because I'm unmarried. I don't have kids. And I'm getting to a point where I'm slender enough to actually enjoy moving around. And it's not to flee South Africa so much as I'm just bored shitless. I don't see the economic situation for me getting any better, but I don't hate here. I just love Europe and I want to go and do other shit.
So, Amy, I mean, that's a convoluted answer to your question. I hope it helps. And remember, I mean, it's not like Gord and I have all the answers. There might be people who have moved who have better answers than that. Let's go to Nqobile, who listens to the show, and we've spoken to Nqobile a couple of times about a lot of things, but mostly to do with relationships. So I'm just going to intro this by saying that Bachelorette South Africa, Uyajola 99, there's a lot of stuff that makes you roll your eyes when it comes to South African television. But I want to talk to Nqobile today about these and other shows. And you call yourself, you say you used to be a nerdy introvert and you would be scared to approach and get dates with people. But now you're the opposite because you've done 11 years of reading, attending seminars on dating. You figured out how to get women. So teach the rest of us. What's up, dude? And by the way, there's no picture on this. If you're wondering, Nqobile is having camera issues, so he's decided he's going to join us just in audio. Tell us what's brought about this change over 11 years.
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah,
I see the movement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Just to touch on the history bit. I wouldn't say now I'm a total opposite. I'll consider myself a guru. No, I don't think anyone, in my opinion, having been in this, having explored this industry or this part of the zeitgeist, there's no such thing as an actual absolute guru in my opinion. But yes, I used to be very nerdy. Like, just to give you a brief history, in high school, I literally didn't date anyone. I liked a lot of girls, had crushes like normal people, but whenever, go and approach a girl, my friends would even encourage me, bring girls and say, hey, talk to her. I would be hit with approach anxiety or anxiety just to ask a girl out, like, okay, I can talk to her like how I'm talking to you guys. And then when it comes to, okay, now nail it on the coffin and say, would you go out with me, please? That will never occur. Or advance whatever friendship I would have developed with the lady to that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now, after I left high school, then I started realizing, okay, wait, I'm a grown adult now. I can't use the excuse that I'm a kid anymore. I can't say, hey, I'm still at school. I'm focusing on school. That's why I'm still a virgin. That stuff didn't fly anymore as, my friends that I kept on making as I'm progressing through life, they were having romantic relationships, etc. I'm interacting with their lady friends and whatever. So I had more pressure to finally get a girlfriend. So anyways, I struggle for the first couple of years.
What age were you when you first had a relationship?
21, actually. I was 21.
That's not too late.
It depends. Nowadays, kids are 12, and things happen. But anyway, what I would say is at that time, for me, at a 21-year-old who was a virgin, no one was like, what? People were still shocked. They looked at me like, but you look like a normal dude. You should be getting laid as old, like an average dude.
What are you in a community where people are starting to have sex at like 16? I mean, what?
Yes. No, it happened everywhere. Come on, guys. Let's be honest.
Well,
teenagers. I'm talking about teenagers, not 12. I'm exaggerating when I say 12, but I'm saying like teenagers getting involved in all those things. That's what I mean.
So, dude, some people start a bit later. I mean, I only started in my 20s, so I don't know. I don't know that you're that far behind. But what I'm interested in
1 week over 18, and I remember feeling like I missed an important deadline. And like in retrospect, it means nothing. I was like, I don't care if it's. I had it. It's a long story. We won't do it now. But I had it with a steady girlfriend at the time. We had it scheduled for the day before my 18th birthday. But that was the matric dance, and it got very loose. So it didn't end up being the right kind of night for it. So the following weekend, and I was like, 1 week. Why, Lord, 1 week?
I just want to go back to Nqobile for a second here. So just explain to me, because you've been watching these TV shows, and I want to hear your feedback on those, because that's something all of us can relate to. I watch these shows, and I'm blown away at how awful people's idea of a relationship seems to be getting. I think it's harder than ever for people to find meaningful relationships, to have meaningful conversations with each other, and to attach any importance whatsoever to the interactions that we see people having, because these reality shows give you such a bad impression of what's really going on. Tell me your thoughts on them.
Yeah. So based off that, and having educated myself with the people that know how to get girls, when you look at these shows, then you realize they're just basically repackaging and selling us Hollywood. That's all they're doing. Yeah. They reselling Disney fantasy, where and here's the interesting thing that I think a lot of women would disagree and say, oh no, women are being sold the traditional man and men are being sold the modern woman. These are two different types of people that you're dealing with, because they're not on the same level. They're of different makeup.
Women are being sold the traditional man, as in what? Like the old alpha male, the protector, the hunter, the guy who's strong and brave and true. That kind of thing. Is that what you mean by traditional
knight in shining armor? He's chivalrous. All that beautiful.
What are we being? We're being sold the modern woman, as in
the woman. You need to bow down to that woman, my guy. She is strong. You better, you know what? You don't dare ask her.
The strong, independent woman who can juggle a job and children.
She's Captain Marvel.
Yeah, she's sexy. She's attractive. She's intelligent. She's everything. In other words, she
sounds like you're trying to put He-Man with Captain Marvel, and that works for me. I mean, again, I don't have an opinion on this kind of stuff. I'm just learning as I go. But it sounds like Captain Marvel and He-Man are a good couple.
But
I would disagree.
Yeah, in your opinion, then, Nqobile, where's the disconnect?
So the disconnect is the traditional man is of the, again, as the word says, traditional. He's conservative. He has that kind of mindset. The modern woman, again, she's modern. She's no longer following that old way of thinking of being a traditional wife. Now, a traditional man needs a traditional wife because those two people will be in sync, because they understand their roles in the relationship, and they will have minimal clashes. Let me put it that way. For example, a traditional man knows, okay, I need to be protector, provider. Let me go do that. The traditional wife will be like, or the traditional partner, woman will be like, I'm here to take care of everything else whilst he's gone. I am basically in command now. And it works in that dynamic. Now, the modern woman says, no, my guy, you're going out to get the bacon. I'm coming with you. In fact, I will lead. Now, the traditional man will have an issue with that, technically speaking, as in he's now like, okay, you're displacing me of the traditional role, but yet you want me to be traditional, because that's what the modern woman is nowadays.
Is this what you see in these TV shows? You see
exactly
these women in these traditional men, and they're just not syncing properly. They're stuck in different times.
That's basically what I'm seeing with these shows. Because, like, looking at The Bachelorette, never mind The Bachelor, even The Bachelor. The Bachelor is playing to that narrative, but it's very fictitious. It's not real. To see a good-looking man like that who's going to act all charming and, that's just not the average dude. We all know average guys don't act like that. The same way, for example, if you look at dating shows like Live Island, and then the other ones like my most favorite one recently is Single and Mingle, where you have these women, okay, I need a man who's going to pay this and do this, but then she won't do the traditional wife stuff or what the traditional man wants her to do. Like, okay, if you want me to provide and give you money and go for an allowance or all that, can you as a woman then expect to please stay at home? She's like, no, how dare you? That's sexist, and all that fancy wording that goes on with that. So it's that type of mentality. And
let's just bring Sia and Gord in here, because you're saying a lot of things, and I don't want us to get lost in the reeds here. So does anything that Nqobile is saying at the moment make any sense to you? Does it sound to you, from the observer's point of view, like we have two different value judgments being made by most of the men and most of the women, and most of the men are looking for a certain kind of woman, and most of the women are looking for a certain kind of men, and they're disconnected? Do you guys feel that that's got merit, or do you think he's talking nonsense?
Sia, go ahead, please. You look like you were loaded up there. So my thing is, look, first of all, I think those are like legitimately quite profound insights from watching TV shows. And I kind of, my take from it is that a traditional setup, whether it's good or bad, I'm not saying what should be the case with society. A traditional setup is a man looking more for a PA/sidekick. And in the modern situation, a woman obviously doesn't want to be that and might actually want the man to be the sidekick. But my issue with it is, while everything you say is perfectly relevant, the idea of looking at this as an analog for real life and not clearly a bullshit contrived scenario where nothing happens like it should, and it's not a reflection of modern relationship dynamics. If you're looking to it to like be right in terms of how people act, you doomed from the start. Like Survivor on an island is not a true reflection of social dynamics, because it's people starving on an island with cameras everywhere,
Yeah.
So what are you saying is the solution here in these dynamics?
Okay, I'll start with what Gord said first, because I like what you said, Gord, because that's a relevant and it's perfect rebuttal that people would ask me, and had many conversations with people asking in that way. So what happens is, I would like to go back to the 1950s. What was portrayed in television and in all medias at that time? The wife, the husband, the two kids. Right. By the time you hit past the baby boomers, what was the norm by that time? The wife, the husband, the two kids. That was the norm. But by the 70s, then you saw a huge shift. 60s, well, they'll say the 60s because of the whole pill revolution, etc. But from that time onwards, you saw the whole shift in the mindset whereby the propaganda machine, as I call it, which is what media is, will start pumping out the narrative of you don't need a husband anymore. Women were prompted up more, which is not a bad thing, to be honest. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying is, from that time of the 60s all the way till now, the male role of traditional male has been ignored. It's been stuck in time. Let me put it that way. They haven't evolved it.
We'll get back to your solution in a second, but there's ample research that's been conducted on the happiness levels, whatever that may be, and they've measured it in various ways. But the happiness levels of women in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and going back further than that, turns out there were more happy women, and this is arbitrary research. I can't say that I have any dog in this fight because I don't know what it means. But there were women were generally more pleased and satisfied with relationships and it got worse and worse as the years have gone on. And part of how it's got worse is because what makes women happy, and again, we're four guys talking about this, so I'm not by any means saying that this isn't ironic, but what makes women happy and what they think makes them happy are two different things. And the kinds of relationships that women want, as opposed to the kind that the media and that Hollywood and that magazines and that, sex advice columnists give them, are two very, very different things. That's an interesting dynamic. It's kind of curious to see that so many women who are in traditional marriages with two children, whose husband goes out and works and she stays at home with the kids, a lot of those women are much, much happier than the empowered feminists that claim that they're equal and all the rest of it. Now, again, that's a huge generalization, huge generalization, but that is what the research seems to indicate. And that is an uncomfortable thing for egalitarians and for people who are interested in equality and in the position of women in society. It's a very difficult thing for them to deal with. I don't mind particularly. As far as I'm concerned, women can have it all and should be allowed to choose to have it all. But it's interesting that so many women are going into their 30s and 40s feeling very unfulfilled. And if you sit down with them and you talk to them about what they'd really like in their life, sometimes it isn't all the success that they may already have. It may be just.
I think that's everybody, though. I don't necessarily think that's entirely women. I mean, I think a lot of people opt for the Boardman's lounge suite and the SUV and the beige.
The difference is that things have changed far more quickly and far more radically for women than they have for men. Men's role in society and in the family has been more or less constant, whereas for women, they've had to adapt to a huge amount of change.
And there's now a schism between the two. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's my point.
And maybe, Nqobile, now before we carry on, you offer us your potential solution to this, and maybe you help so many men who are unable to find the right woman and so many women who are unable to find the right man.
Yeah, so my solution is nothing new. A lot of people have already spoken about this. It just depends on where do you search for the knowledge, obviously. And people always act like, oh my gosh, why are you speaking so much sense? I haven't heard this before. You have psychologists like Dr. Jordan Peterson, for example, most recent one. He has highlighted this, like you were mentioning about the egalitarian environment. He was talking about the studies in Norway, whereby in the Scandinavian countries, where the more egalitarian they got, the more sexual differences there were between men and women in the career that they chose, which speaks to human nature. So my solution would be, the problem right now is we have people ignoring the facts, ignoring the nature that is human, ignoring the fact that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. There's fundamental differences between the two. Yes, outside of the physical and those other aspects, we are all equal in front of the law, economy, great stuff. But the point is, when it comes to relationship, we are not the same. That is a fact, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Like, for example, if you are a high-powered woman, career woman, you need to then, I saw someone in the chat saying, I learned from Kevin Samuels, not necessarily Kevin Samuels, but he speaks of it more. He's more recently famous for it, but it's been going on for a long time. But for example, if you look at the current high-powered corporate woman, if she is basically looking for a high-powered traditional man, that will never happen for her. Unfortunately, few men would reach. Few men are eligible for her.
Well, it's like two positives, they'll repel each other as opposed to two negatives. A negative and a positive. What I think is maybe important here too is that obviously there are outliers and there are exceptions that prove the rule. There is amazing power couples who are both tremendously successful. Maybe one out earns the other by a small margin. They also have what appears to be a very happy family life and everything else, but somehow they find the energy to do both properly. I don't know how they do that. And then you get those people who fulfill the different roles in the relationship in really unique and interesting ways. Unfortunately, though, whether those of us who think that that's great or not, and I include myself in the group who think that it is great that things have developed and changed, But the reality is that those exceptions don't change the rule. The rule is still that men and women have different roles in society, and very, very importantly, in the family. And that we're not going to change that. Not in 50 years, not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years are we going to change those roles. And they are largely tied to our evolution and to our biology. And there's no matter how much theory we come up with in universities or how much equality we try to impose on society, there is always going to be the indisputable fact that women bear and raise children and have the primary function in child rearing, whether men like it or not, and that men's primary role in the family is to be the breadwinner and the protector. And those things are very seldom going to change. And in very, very exceptional circumstances will they change.
My solution, thanks, Gareth, and by highlighting that. And my solution is simple based on that. As in, think about it as in, now, if you are, like, again, if you're a high-powered woman and you are, let's say, an alpha woman for argument's sake, okay, just to consolidate it, expect a beta male. Expect that guy who's going to be more subservient to you. Accept it, embrace it. It's okay to date those men. But the women that I'm seeing now, and having seen in the corporate world, the higher she goes, hypergamy is really a thing. Women will not go lower. Women will either compromise at the same level, but they always want to aim higher.
So, Nqobile, how does this change how you date?
Me? No. How it changes, it has changed it in the sense of I now prefer women in the same kind of mindset as me, because we want minimal clashes in a relationship. I don't believe in this whole thing of, relationship have fights sometimes. Having been in a couple of relationships since, I've realized that's not actually healthy. So what I've realized is I need to have a lady who understands me, and I need and I can understand her. We be on that level of, let's say, intellectual understanding of roles. I'm a man, you're a woman, like, again, irrespective of her background and where she is. The point is, are we in sync? Because that's where the disconnect is. Hollywood is with these dating shows and all that. Yes, they may be they'd be exaggerating, or they're not how society is. But they, what's that famous saying? Culture is downstream politics, or whatever the thing they say. But that they lead the trend of how people have accepted. Because look at Instagram, people literally believe all that stuff that you see on Instagram, but in real life it's not.
I mean,
it's that type of stuff.
There's another point, and this point is being made by Ntogozo. He says, and rightly so, that finances have changed the power dynamic. And I think this is a really good point. Society is currently structured to force a situation where men and women both work and have to take on that primary protector and breadwinner role, because you can't really raise kids in a single income household anymore. It's just practically very, very difficult, especially if you want to give your kids everything. And Dogozo is saying here, she must also take care more of the finances in the household. People get paid more, but also money has become, in some situations, more important than other things, because money allows you to do the things that you might not be able to do without money, obviously.
And I agree, and that is part of the problem. I would say money is part of it, but it's also the culture and the philosophy and the ideologies that are brought up because of that. As in that case, as in like you've been explaining the different roles of both sexes, and that's what my solution is. There's many great books. Most recently, I can just say this, but
I think you've highlighted some really interesting stuff here. I don't think we're going to solve all of this in one day. Gord, you've been ominously quiet. Do you want to add anything before we say goodbye to Nqobile?
I mean, look, it's been an interesting listen. I don't necessarily agree with all of the points of view, but they're all quite informed and considered. But for me, it's like a personal way I deal with it. It all sounds to me like narrative, and I think that that's a massive issue with individuals and with society. Like, there are roles. I want to be this. I'm not that. I need to be more of that, inward and outward. Other people must be this and that. So for me personally, and I bat a little bit above my league. I don't mind saying I do all right with ladies, and I'm not an underwear model or a millionaire, but I just deal with each person on a personal level. Like, for it to be a romantic or sexual thing, there's certain gender compatibility. I'm into women, and they have to not mind fat men. But with that, after that, it's just a personal dynamic. It's like each individual is an individual, what they do, what they think. I don't think, are you within the correct role or not? I just don't believe in roles.
I wouldn't say it's a role per se. It's philosophies. Think about it. Like, for example, think about a Christian being involved with an atheist.
Oh, dude, I totally get it. I'm just saying my way around it is not to have a role for myself or for someone else.
Fair enough.
Try not to.
And that's beautiful, Gordon. Now you would resonate more with women that align with that kind of mindset that you have. That's basically how we are.
I tend to resonate with women. I tend to resonate with women aligned with divorce. That's my demographic.
Hey, we all have our,
not from me. I'm there to fix things after. I'm the post-divorce repair kit.
Hey, man, you a needed guy actually in the society. But
I do a service.
All right, Nqobile, I'm going to let you go, but thanks, dude. It's always interesting to talk to you. Thanks for the point of view.
I would like to just end off and saying thank you again, you guys, for the opportunity. And I saw someone in the chat saying I should start my podcast. I'm talking too much. I do actually have a YouTube channel called Black Oxymoron. Of course,
everybody does. Yes, good. Black Oxymoron is right.
That's where I go.
Oxymoron.
Yes, that's where I go in depth with all my concepts. Again, with narrative, it is narrative driven. But thank you very much, guys.
All right, dude.
That was cool. Thanks, dude. Yeah, so whether
you aren't into roles, well, I'm into rolls. I'm into croissants. I'm into baguettes. I'm into bread.
I'm on keto. That's how I've done all of this. That's exactly what I meant. I almost cracked that joke. I'm glad that you saw the opportunity for that joke. I passed on it, but I also did see it. No, I was also thinking, I want to be concise because the homie was not short of stuff to say, and I'm like, well, I'm the long-winded one on the show, so let's give another Oka chance. Also, that kind of stuff is complicated and it's sensitive, and I'm not afraid to speak on it, but my views are pretty chilled, pretty non-complicated.
I want us to gloss over the fact that you said that your sweet spot is the divorced woman. It's interesting.
I'm finally in an age, etc., where I'm appealing to what's always been my demographic. Like when I was in my 20s, a hot 40-something that's divorced, a bit bitter about men and doesn't want to put up with anyone's bullshit was like, I won't say the prize as if there's objects out there I'm trying to acquire, but that was like my dream situation. And as I've gotten older, I would expect that demographic is going to get less and less appealing as you approach being that yourself. And I still generally have the same preferences. So these women now are much more interested to have the conversation than when I was like 25 and just throwing a Hail Mary of note.
Do you know who's suddenly found a renaissance and they've changed quite a lot, and they kind of they're starting to burst into bloom? Is old Eugene Khoza. We must speak to him, Sia. Get him on the show because he seems to have I've always liked Eugene. He's always been a very smart guy and very funny. But I will say that Eugene
bless you in the name of the Lord.
Eugene, who I follow on Instagram and we're friends on Facebook too, he's started to run. He's like what Bulelo does. He runs and he posts these things of like his
route with nothing's chasing him. He's not late. He just voluntarily accelerates his body to a point of exertion for an extended period. Does he run to where he already is? That's the thing that amazes me about jogging, right? You're at home and you're like, right, I'm going to run. And I'm like, why? What's wrong? No, nothing. Yeah. Are you late? I'll give you a lift. No, I'm just going to run. Oh, cool. Where are you running to? Well, I'm running to here. via the Caltex garage.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's up to at the moment. So let's get Eugene Khoza on the show because I'd like to catch up with that dude again, see what he's up to.
Okay.
All right. Gordo, have an excellent day. Thanks for joining us this morning. And
Thank you, my guys.
If you want to be part of the show, then let us know, like Nqobile did, especially if you've got a point of view that you want to share with us, because then we can have you on the show live. We can join the conversation with you in real time, and you can do that by getting us on email, Gareth@cliffcentral.com. You can also message us on 079 748 2090, or you can just message the YouTube channel.
And if you've got a friend like Pete out there that's driving you nuts on a WhatsApp group, maybe outside of the group, reach out to them and ask them what's going on. They probably just want to be heard. And if you listen, they might get it out of their system. Or just kick Pete the hell off the WhatsApp group, because no one's got time for that bullshit and they can get a life. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Listen, I don't know that we solved that particular problem this morning.
No, we really didn't.
I'll keep you informed.
Was a bit of a help
In fact, you're even more conflicted about what to do about Pete now than you were when you started. We did the opposite of help you, Gareth.
Yeah, I am. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you can go and listen to the podcast and you can see it's a whole spiel about a WhatsApp group. And if you've got suggestions on that front too, maybe you're a proper professional in that realm. Maybe you're someone who's had experience with this. Let us know. All right, everybody, have a happy day. It's Wednesday, the 7th of April, cliffcentral.com.